you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles, and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink them twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Reade came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reade gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bares their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are.
They'll gladly stagnate a living wage, snap the chains and bury it.
Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph or Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren. Say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights. Forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near, and all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark because you aren't, because we aren't. Perfect time for you to burn the bridge to self-forgiveness. Now's the chance, take a stand, stay your hand before you cast another vote for corporate interest. Another vote that chokes your hopes of owning your own home or opening a business. They love to say their hands were tied, the stars just weren't aligned for them to get their votes in line to see their promises delivered. But they killed it in an instant. Bills don't die by accident, they're all assassinated on behalf of the Congressional kismet. By some lobbyists who see themselves as agents of clandestine fate, not fences in a prison. Dealing in the stolen goods of sleeping slaves and trading on the futures of their children. Betting on a spread of daily dead where every grave's creating profit by them.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome back. I'm sorry we missed you last Monday, but here we are Monday night. And just so my audience knows, we are going to be switching our time because, as some of you know, I work for the Kim Iverson Show as a producer. And I love my politics of survival. I love being your host and all of that good stuff. But we have to take that Monday night for her, and because she's doing the time change to 6 p.m. Starting later on this week. And I'm going to be guest hosting actually Thursday for her show. So starting a week from Friday, we'll be on every Friday at 7 o'clock. Reef was nice enough. Big shout out to Reef with Indie News Network, who does the studio producing for me, will be helping me. And Reef, could you say to the audience when your show is so people can tune into it?
Wednesday nights, 9 o'clock, INN News. You can find us at indienews.network. You know, it should be in the description below. So check us out. Me and Colin. 9 Eastern. Yep.
Or, yeah. Yep. They talk about cool stuff. So sometimes, yeah.
Yep.
All right. So tonight I have a really special show. I have somebody that I really admire because he is calling the whistle. He's whistleblowing on the FBI. He worked for them for 23 years. He's now retired, and he's a commentator and can talk about many geopolitical things as well as his experience within the FBI and intelligence services. So welcome to the show, Steve Gray, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I appreciate it.
Now, I know, and I don't want to dispel the good work that you did, because you did good work with the FBI, you know, keeping people safe, I'm sure, and hopefully, but you're blowing the whistle for a reason after 23 years. Could you educate our audience about who you are and what happened? And then we'll kind of launch into some of the geopolitical stuff.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. So my name's Steve Gray. I grew up and spent my entire life here in New Jersey, except when I worked in Washington, D.C. I've been in law enforcement for 32 years, 9 as a police officer and a police sergeant, a street sergeant. And then I entered the FBI, and I spent 23 years in the FBI. In the FBI, I worked across all divisions. I worked counterintelligence, I worked counterterrorism, and I worked criminal. I also worked within the Special Operations Division on the Covert Counterterrorism Surveillance Team. And that was a nationwide team in which we would travel across the nation, searching out counterterrorism suspects and trying to bring them to justice. In my final years of the FBI, I had gone from the criminal squad. I was actually working bank frauds and scams. And I went over to a friend of mine asked me to come over and assist him as the primary supervisor within the Operations Command Center. And within the Operations Command Center, I got a chance to see a lot of things I've never seen before within the FBI, and a lot of the information coming into the FBI that was fresh and new before it was disseminated out to the FBI agents across the New York office. And we were also responsible for coordinating arrest teams, ensuring that the arrest teams, when they went out, they didn't run into an arrest team that was working for the U.S. Marshal Service or the NYPD or that sort of thing. And that was very important because, as you know, if those two teams clashed on the street or they came across each other on the street, something bad could happen. So we wanted to make sure all of the information was out to those teams and they knew exactly who had guns and who was working on what team and that sort of thing. But what really struck me is that I was sitting at my desk one day and I saw the banner come up for a new nationwide case. And I looked into that case, and here we were basically targeting parents as domestic terrorists who were attending school board meetings over mask mandates. And that struck me really, really bad because I'm a father and I have 2 children who are in school. The other thing is, what the straw that broke the camel's back, and one of the reasons why I left the FBI, was because of the way we were treating our January 6th protesters. Our January 6th protesters were not being treated the same way as normal arrestees within the New York office. And when I say that, I mean, a lot of these warrants were misdemeanor warrants. And we were sending 10-man arrest teams out to arrest 60 and 70-year-old individuals, grandmothers and grandfathers, who were just standing on the Capitol steps or had gone into the Capitol building and come out and didn't create any violence whatsoever. And we were banging on their doors at 6 in the morning, rushing in, handcuffing these people, searching their homes, and bringing them down into the FBI building. When on a normal case, and I work bank fraud, we did this normally across the spectrum a lot. If we had a misdemeanor warrant, we would call the individual up on the phone, explain to them that we have a warrant for their arrest for something that they had done within the banking industry. And we needed them to come down to the FBI building so that we could process them, take them over to court, and 9.5 times out of 10, they would be home before 5 p.m. That's the normal procedure. That's normally what we would have done. And we weren't doing that with the January 6th protesters because the FBI had become basically the right arm of the Joe Biden administration. And we had basically been doing political hit jobs, including the January 6th protester cases.
You know, I really relate to that because, as you may know from Kyle Seraphin, who was also on my show, who was also a former FBI and has been blowing the whistle on their activities. Yeah, you know, my case, I got a sealed warrants sent to me by Joe Biden's arm of the intelligence service by the DOJ, and it's still a sealed case. And basically, I've been accused of all kinds of things, including being a Russian asset and so on and so forth, and been intimidated. All of it was to silence me, but it didn't do that. So I'm still speaking out. I haven't gotten the knock and raid that other people have, like at 6 a.m. And just as an aside, why do they do it at 6 a.m? Like, what is that? Are they just morning people, or like?
Well, because 6 a.m. is the minimum time by law that the FBI can start making arrests at somebody's home. Under a warrant, you can petition the judge for a warrant to get an earlier time, but 6 a.m. is the minimum time. So normally under certain cases, like certain dangerous gang members or organized crime members, we may petition the court for 3 or 4 in the morning. And that's only in a specific case where we would actually send a SWAT team in to go make the arrest of that gang member because they're so dangerous. And we know that they're probably sleeping or that sort of thing. And the SWAT team can go in and effectively make an arrest without, any danger to the FBI agents or the people inside.
But that's changed under Biden administration because they've been sending SWAT teams, like you were mentioning January 6th, but I actually had a member of the Socialist Party who is 80 years old. He's a African-American who's 80 years old, who's been doing the African Socialist Party, who's very American. All their offices are in America. They got accused of the FARA Act or something, the FARA Act, the Foreign Registration Act. But anyway, they brought in drones, armored vehicles, full guns. I mean, like everything. And he and his wife are like close to 80 years old, and we're awake and having breakfast. I mean, like what is happening?
That's basically what's been going on within the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party and the Joe Biden administration has full control over the Justice Department and the FBI. And the Justice Department and the FBI go hand in hand. So don't let the Justice Department fool you and make you think that they are an equal justice organization when they're not. They slant far left. Most of their lawyers are far left. And what I found within the Justice Department and also within the FBI, many of the lawyers that are working for these two organizations are usually individuals that couldn't find a job on the outside world. And they ran to the FBI to try to get a job where they could use their law degree. And that's what I was seeing within the FBI. These aren't quality lawyers, let me tell you. These are individuals that couldn't find a job anywhere else, making big money. So they settled for the FBI with hopes of making big money farther down the road. And when I say that, I mean, you have your attorneys within the Justice Department working, right. They fight and they scramble to try to get into the best courtrooms in America, and that would probably be the Southern District of New York. And then they work and then hope to get, with their connections, to get a job at a big law firm later on where they can make the big bucks.
It sounds really, really horrible. And, but I wanted to switch gears here for a minute because there's been a story that's been bubbling, an international story, geopolitical. So I wanted to turn our focus to that. And that is, of course, what everyone's talking about, the Chinese balloon, right? So I call it the weather balloon because that's what it looks like. And it was kind of just floating. And I guess my position on this, just so you know, is that I feel like China knows where all our nuclear silos are. Like, I don't think they needed to send a balloon. I'm sure there's some sort of theory. And Reef, if you want to put up some of the memes, but there's some good memes that came out of the whole balloon debacle. But you worked in a lot of issues around China, and we were kind of having a pre-conversation before the show. Could you kind of tell me your take on this? Because I think it's a little different than mine, but go ahead and
Sure.
talk about it.
Myself working, basically as a supervisor within the Chinese counterintelligence division, it's important to know that the Chinese are not United States friends. They are here for the sole purpose to spy on America. Now, a lot of people don't understand that by Chinese law, every single Chinese citizen is required to spy on America for the Chinese. And that's every single American, or every single Chinese person. So that means every Chinese student, every Chinese professor, anybody that's here working for a Chinese business like Google or Facebook or whoever, right? They're there to steal as much intellectual property as they can, and then transfer it back to the Chinese government. I mean, there's a simple reason.
This is economic competition.
Sure, it's both. It's both. It's across the board. Any information that they can get, and they're required to do it. I mean, but the Chinese have been getting away with it for years, right? So Donald Trump starts the China Initiative, which allows for FBI agents greater scrutiny in investigating Chinese students at these universities who are stealing intellectual property from these universities blindly. And what does Biden do? Biden, as soon as he takes office, he starts to slowly deteriorate that and then brings an end to the China Initiative, which basically handcuffs the hands of FBI agents who want to go investigate these students that are at these universities. Listen, not every student is a spy, but every student is a potential spy. And that's important because if they're working on groundbreaking technology, that technology they could steal and send back to China. I mean, there's a reason why, if you haven't seen it, all of their jet fighters for the military, their ships, and their tanks look like ours because they've already stolen that information. And that's just a professional opinion on my point. I don't have any proof of that, but you don't need that if you just compare the different planes and the tanks and the ships. They all look the same. And there's a reason for that, because they've probably been stealing that information for years. The Chinese, they deal with America. They don't want a full out war with America right now. They want to basically kill us by a death of 1,000 cuts, meaning that they have their spies on the ground. They have their satellites on the ground. And now they have these balloons. We don't know what these balloons are. And, it's kind of scary. And I've said this before, in my professional opinion, I believe that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, is either he's compromised by the Chinese government, either directly or indirectly through his son, Hunter Biden. And that's important to know, because if you look at this balloon, the US government never told us it was here. They never took the opportunity to shoot this balloon down, no matter what it was. It had known surveillance equipment on it. It had propulsion, which means that the balloon could maneuver back and forth, left and right. And it had a rudder, which means that it could steer. So that this balloon was being steered by somebody. It wasn't just floating within the atmosphere. And it was making left and right turns over our military bases. Well, why was it doing that? Well, that's what we need to find out. If the US government knows, they should have taken action and taken this thing down beforehand. When they finally did take the action to take this down, number one, they took it down over water, which makes it harder to retrieve the equipment. And number two, they used the Sidewinder missile and blew the heck out of this thing right at where basically the surveillance equipment was. They could have taken it out at the balloon, but they didn't do that. They took it out where the equipment was, which basically allows for us not to gather any information.
Let me ask you this. Like, I'm gonna push back a little bit because I have a little different view. But like, two things. First of all, I'm not, as you know, Biden fan at all. So this isn't in defense of the Biden administration.
Sure.
But I guess how I feel as a person who, as you know, is anti-imperialist, anti-war, I feel like some of these same arguments that you're making about China was made about Russia. And it's like trying to create this enemy where we have to spend money and we have to build up our military. And I guess to this point, first of all, weather balloons, like, okay, or spy balloons, whatever you want to call it. I call it, they say it's a meteorological, whatever. It's not proven what it is, or if it's a communication, some sort of device or whatever it is, scanning device, whatever that thing was. It's supposed to be difficult to take down those balloons. It's very difficult. And, it's interesting because on, the show earlier today, Kim was talking about that, about the difficulties of that. She also talked about concerns about China. But my personal opinion is that why would China want to do surveillance in that way? Are they making fun of us? Are they provoking us? Are they seeing what our military, how they will respond? Are those kinds of things happening? And if so, is it tied in to our aggression via NATO for this proxy war in Ukraine against Russia? Is it somehow what now?
If you want me to play that, it's kind of in line.
Okay, go ahead and play it. Yeah, I haven't even seen it yet, so go ahead. That's fine. We can't hear it.
Can hear it? Here, how about this?
It's a very different thing. So you can be outraged by the people running our country selling out our country to China, and you should be, but that's a very different thing from wanting to go to war with China, a war that we have no assurance we would win, to put it mildly. But in a memo to his troops, four-star Air Force General Mike Minahan wrote this, quote, "My gut tells me we will fight in 2025. Xi Jinping secured his third term and set his war council in October 2022. Taiwan's presidential elections are in 2024 and will offer Xi a reason. U.S. presidential elections are in 2024 and will offer Xi a distracted America. Xi's team, reason, and opportunity are all aligned for 2025. So what should we take of this? Again, you can be deeply skeptical, in fact, hostile toward China, and still be worried about going to war with China. Jimmy Dore is the host of the Jimmy Dore Show. He joins us tonight to assess. Jimmy, should we be paying attention to a memo like this? What do you think?
So, and then Jimmy Dore, like I heard Jimmy Dore's part of this, which is it's really interesting. So what is your thought on that? What Tucker said?
Well, it's interesting, right? It's an interesting theory. But me studying the Chinese for as long as I had, and I know we talked about this before we came on air. The Chinese are somewhat unpredictable, but they're predictable. And when I say that, I mean they're unpredictable by what this balloon was, right? We don't know if maybe they needed more precise mapping of the missile silos over certain military areas. And the only way they could do that with, the atmospheric changes between their satellites and, getting something below the atmosphere where they could do it was they needed this balloon. I'm not really sure. And why the heck that they blew it, the heck out of that thing over the ocean, I'll never know. We can put a man on the moon. We can shoot a missile in the air and dock it with a space station within, millimeters. But yet we can't take a balloon down with all the scientists we have and basically pinpoint the exact landing spot based on mathematical and calculations of how much, air is going to go through the balloon, where you shoot it, and that sort of thing. Those are the things that are scary about our government. And it's important to know you're never going to get the truth out of the United States government, and you're certainly not going to get the truth out of the Chinese government. But again, getting back to this death by 1,000 cuts with the Chinese, they like to process everything with their spies, and they think they're a lot smarter than us. And when I say that, I mean, I talked about this back last March on a program with the Chinese, and when Chinese tensions were growing with Taiwan. And everybody thought that the Chinese were going to march into Taiwan. And I said, no, that's not going to happen, because the Chinese have so many spies within Taiwan right now, and they're paying off so many people within Taiwan. They're hoping that they can just turn the people of Taiwan into a pro-Chinese island and then take over the island that way. That's what they're looking to do. And I believe that's what they're looking to do. And along the same respects of, they're kind of doing that here as well, right? They're involved in the fentanyl trade. They're involved with, they're pouring money into these Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all of these socialist groups who are attacking the US government and attacking the conservative movement. They're pouring money into. We saw the same exact thing in the 60s with the Soviet Union, pouring money into these groups within the 60s, with the anti-Vietnam movement and that sort of thing. So the Chinese, I don't think that they want an all-out war, but they definitely want control within the area around where they are, meaning they want control of the Strait of Taiwan. They want control of the waters between the Philippines and the waters around Japan. They want to control all of those waters, and they don't want the United States there. So they're trying to drive us out.
Well, and let's look at that. Okay, because we just got a new military base in the Solomon Islands, and I think there's a total of, is it 52, if my memory serves, military bases all around China. Again, kind of surrounding it like we did Russia. So who is the aggressor?
Yeah.
What is our end game with that? Like,
yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. So, a lot of these bases have been there for a long time. This is with the United States government. Somebody had showed me the stock trades of Halliburton and how the Halliburton stock was way down. And after the Ukrainian war started, Halliburton stocks are going way up and way up and way up.
right.
It's interesting, but I hate to say this, but and it's true. War makes people rich, and war is making, number one, our politicians rich and all of our military companies rich. Meanwhile, the people that foot the bill are just normal Americans who are going to work every day and who are just trying to survive high prices, high gas prices, high food prices, and just trying to provide for their family. And
Right.
it's completely ridiculous that the United States government plays these games with, that puts us on the brink of war almost all the time. I'm not for war at all. I agree with you because it's really stupid, right? We've been in, look, we were in the Vietnam War. We lost tens of thousands of soldiers within the Vietnam War. And now we trade Coca-Cola with them. And most of our goods are coming from them, furniture, toys, everything else. What did it do? There was no reason to have that war if the end game, we didn't change Vietnam, but yet Vietnam is now supplying us with cheap goods. And we think that's great.
So this is economic, and that's what, towards the end of the show, I'll have Reef play that Jimmy Dore clip, which was really good. But what looking at the China thing, because you did a lot of the work for many years, over a decade, right? You were in counterintelligence and you worked with.
I worked counterintelligence for just over 7 years.
A decade, yeah. So what, in your opinion, what did you learn? What was the biggest thing that you learned that you kind of carry with you now that you would like to tell the audience or tell people? Not to fearmonger, but just like facts.
I want people to understand that there are people out there that they're looking to harm the United States, and they're looking to harm United States citizens, and a lot of that information is gathered within the United States. So those countries have to put spies on the ground to get that information, and I think that more Americans need to be vigilant about that. But there's too much money at stake. The Chinese throw money around like they're not a wealthy nation, but they have no problem spreading this money around and trying to buy information from people. And you only have to look at Hunter Biden to see that. Hunter Biden got involved with China Energy. China Energy is basically tied directly to the Chinese government, and the Chinese government has their what we call intelligence officers or spies within that company that I believe were having direct contact with Hunter Biden, and he probably didn't even know it. And
what was the alleged amount? I'm sorry, that he got for his family?
I believe it was over 30 million. And but see, that's what we know cash, right? That's what we understand cash. But we also understand that he got paid with diamonds, and diamonds are a spy's best friend because diamonds are easy to hide. They're easy to transport. They don't get picked up on a metal detector, and they're easy to unload when you get back to the place where you're going. So unfortunately, he got paid in diamonds. We know that's for a fact. That's open source information. Why did he get paid in diamonds? Look, no businessman gets paid in diamonds, right? They get paid in cash. And then they have to report that cash to the United States government, and then they have to pay taxes on that cash. But that's not what's happening within the Biden family. And that's a problem for us because, again, as I said earlier, if Joe Biden is compromised, either directly or indirectly through his son, then that's changing the decisions that are being made within the White House. And again, that's just my professional opinion. That's just based on what I've been reading through open source information on the internet. But that's just, that's just what I believe at this time. And unless somebody says something otherwise, myself, I'm not going to believe otherwise.
So what's happening with the congressional investigations? Because I know they said they were going to start investigating Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and really start digging in. So is that begun, or are we still at a—
I believe, well, again, through open source information, I believe it started to begin, but, this is going to take time. We were already delayed with getting the Congress going and started to begin with. And I believe as long as we continue to have good people within Congress, like Jim Jordan, right? These individuals are going to keep pushing for change. As you know, I ran for United States Congress. When I left the FBI, I was so upset with what was going on within the United States. I wanted to make a change, a real change. So I took $50,000 of my own money and I invested it into my own campaign, right? Without asking for a dime off the bat. And I stood up my campaign and went against one of the most powerful congressmen in the Congress, in Chris Smith. He is a man who's been in Congress for over 42 years. That man was actually first elected when Jimmy Carter was president. And yet he is a rhino, he is a do-nothing, and he is just sitting within Congress, just sucking up as much money as he can get and as much power as he can wield. And it's disgusting. But he has never come out once. I bet you none of your viewers have probably even heard of him. And they've never even heard of one thing that he's done within Congress except help people overseas. Well, that doesn't help Americans here. One of the bills that he tried to put forward was he wanted to use American dollars, tax dollars, to bail out foreign journalists who got arrested overseas, and then provide money to their families while that individual went through the court process in another country. It's absolutely disgusting. What I don't understand is why did the New Jersey put him back in? To this day, I'll never know. Congress has an 18% approval rating, and Chris Smith was a part of that approval rating, and yet New Jersey put him back into office. It's crazy. And these are the problems that we're having. As long as you have a Chris Smith, and I'm getting to my point, as long as you have a Chris Smith in office, you're never going to have another Jim Jordan. You're going to have a Chris Smith who's not going to do anything to disrupt the process. And you're not going to get another Jim Jordan who's trying to disrupt the process and get to the truth.
Well, there you have it. What about and I want to switch the conversation now to kind of the subject, because I had promised the audience Russophobia. You know that Matt Taibbi has been instrumental in, helping unveil and unroll the Twitter files and really exposing Hamilton 68, which propagated this myth that Russia had a bunch of bots and was trying to influence the election. There was a bunch of Russophobia. Rachel Maddow was screeching in everyone's living room every single night, Russiagate, Russiagate, Russiagate. And one of the architects was Charlie McGonigal, who is an FBI agent, right, that you knew, and ironically has just been arrested for what? Taking money, and not very much money, by the way, a Russian oligarch, and ended his career and is now facing prison. Could you, this is amazing, along with all the revelations. Could you talk a little bit to our audience about your experience working around the whole Russiagate debacle and, going after Trump and going after everyone, and you knew Charlie McGonigal. So
yeah. So, I worked with Charlie. He was actually my supervisor at headquarters when I was working within the Counterintelligence division. And we were working Far East Asian affairs at that time. And The one thing I can say about Charlie is, his two best friends within the FBI at that time were Peter Strzok and Andy McCabe. So that's all you need to know about Charlie. Charlie was a great guy, right? Everybody loved him. Everybody wanted to shake his hand. And I have a problem with that. Anybody that sticks his hand out that much to shake people's hands means that they've got something up their sleeve. He always wanted to be everybody's friend. And I actually tested him one day just to see how mad I could get him. And it really took a lot to get him upset because I wanted to see exactly who I was dealing with at the time. And I had only been there like 3 months. And nobody that I have ever met in the FBI is, particularly that nice. And we always had a saying within the FBI, if you weren't getting in trouble, you weren't doing your job, right? And when I say that, I mean, not seriously in trouble where you're disciplined, in a hearing, but, hey, you get called into the supervisor's office, say, hey, you pushed the limit a little bit on that one, right? Well, sometimes FBI agents have to push the limit a little bit to try to get to the truth, right? And,
you are from New Jersey, so
yeah, well, exactly right. I'm born and raised in New Jersey. I'm a New York guy. I've been in New York office all my life. But I mean, what I'm saying is that we've got a lot of slugs within the FBI, right? That leave slime trails from chair to chair. They don't do anything. They're not out there actively working, right? They're just sucking off the system like a politician. And as long as they don't get in trouble, and as long as nobody knows who they are, like Chris Smith, nothing's ever going to happen to them. But it's the guys that are out there that are pounding the pavement, that are doing the job for the American people and keeping the American people safe. Those are the good guys, right? Those are the guys that don't want to go into management. Those are the guys that want to stay on the street. And I don't want to get too far off the Charlie McGonigal thing. But again, getting back to Charlie wanting to be everybody's friend, maybe that was his hook, right? So he was hoping that by, leaning the Democratic side, and Charlie told me basically that he, came from a Democratic family within the Cleveland area, that by, basically staying on that side and knowing that the higher you went within the FBI, the more Democratic it got. And I saw it firsthand at the end of my career, how the basically Democratic supervisors were shutting out good conservative agents from getting promoted, right? And pushing them out the door, and really only agents that they felt leaned Democratic were getting promoted to the top. So I guess
you feel like the Democratic Party has weaponized intelligence services to an extent.
Absolutely. I believe that the FBI right now is a cold-hearted intelligence service only right now within upper management, right? And they're controlling the strings. And when I say that, I mean that they are actively digging up information on American citizens without warrants. That's not their job, right? And you see that it's all in open source information. We see how Peter Strzok manipulated the FISA process and lied on a FISA, and nothing happened to him, right? Yeah, he got fired, but he also got to keep his pension. What is that? That's not right. Andy McCabe got fired for lying, right? This lack of candor. And if you're not following Steve Friend, who is a whistleblower within the FBI, he is releasing information on Twitter right now from what we used to call the quarterly scare reports, right? These are quarterly emails that we would get from OPR, which is basically the Office of Professional Management, for agents that would get in trouble. And it would tell you why they got in trouble, what their discipline was, and basically how it was adjudicated. Well, Steve Friend is releasing those documents now, like one a day or something like that. And they're, it brings me back. Yeah, they're quite interesting because I used to see them every quarter, and they try to scare agents straight, to keep them in line. And that's basically the way the Democrats operate. They want to scare you and keep you in line. And, that's not the way the FBI was set up. The FBI was set up so that, agents had the freedom to go out and get the job done and come back and make arrests. And that's not what we're getting. But with Charlie McGonigal, I mean, this is a man who basically started Crossfire Hurricane with an email. So was he directed to send the email, or did he do this on his own? These are questions that we need to ask. And
explain Crossfire Hurricane. Explain that.
Sure. So basically, it's basically the spy operation against the Donald Trump campaign, right? All of the individuals within the Donald Trump campaign that the government was spying on. This is what started this, right? With some intelligence officer from Australia who had information and brought that information to the FBI, and that's basically what got this all rolling. And I don't believe that any of that was true. I think it was just pure Barack Obama using, the intelligence service to spy on Americans, and he was using Comey to do it. Now, I had a conversation with somebody else online who said, "Oh, Comey is a Republican." Comey's not a Republican. He may say he's a Republican, but everything he's ever done or said and all of his actions always come back to the Democratic Party. And his wife is a staunch Democrat who was friends with Hillary Clinton. So
she was friends with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's face it. I mean,
yeah.
There's a buddy system here.
All go to dinner together. I mean, do you feel like sort of it's a uniparty on some level, or do you see do you see the divide? Where does the divide happen? Because to those of us that are just kind of regular citizens out in the world, it just feels like, okay, we're at war with Russia. Okay, now we're going to fight China. Okay, now we're going to fight Russia. But it's like always kind of the same endless war, whether it's Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran. You know what I mean? So like and the same policies and nothing happens. So is there a truth to the uniparty in your opinion?
Yeah, I believe there's a uniparty because it's not just the Democrats that want to get rich. It's the Republicans that want to get rich too, right? Okay. Now, we have some good people now within the Republican Party who are fighting, right, to get things done, but we don't have enough of them. And they're not, they're big, we look at this guy, Adam Kinzinger. He was the biggest scumbag within the party system. And Liz Cheney is the second biggest scumbag. Of course, there's going to be some debate about that, right? But I mean, these are two individuals who had no purpose being within the Republican Party. And they were there for the sole purpose of getting rich. Liz Cheney learned it from her dad. And who knows what Adam Kinzinger was doing? I mean, that guy's not qualified to sell ice cream, for crying out loud. But the fact of the matter is that, there is a uniparty and they work together hand in hand. Yeah, when a bill comes to the floor, they fight. And like Chris Smith, I know Chris Smith like the back of my hand. He'll stand up there and he'll gavel down or he'll do whatever. And he'll cast his vote against whatever the Democrats have brought forward and all. But he'll cross the aisle every now and then, especially when it comes to a $3.8 billion spending plan or something like that, like he did last year, and pass that sucker along. Well, guess what? My kids and my grandkids are going to be paying for that bill for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, a lot of Americans are suffering right now with the economy. And, we have the State of the Union address coming. I believe it's tomorrow night. Joe Biden is going to be doing that. And there's going to be lots of talk about how there was job creation and the economy's fine. What's your take? Because you're out in the world, you're back east, I'm out west. I can tell you what I see out here. Yeah. What do you see back there? And what's the reality about the rosy economy?
One of the greatest things I ever did was run for Congress. And one of the stupidest things I ever did was run for Congress. And when I say that, I mean, I wasted a lot of my own money, number one, right? Money that I had saved, my hard-earned money, because I thought I was doing something good. But the Republican Party shut me out, and they didn't want anything to do with me, right? So I turned to the people, and I went door to door. I knocked on thousands of doors. I went to thousands of different organizations, right? And I talk to people every day. And what I found is that the people of New Jersey are hurting. They're hurting. They don't have the money that they used to. They didn't have the spending cash that they used to. At the time I was campaigning, I was spending $2,000 a month on gasoline alone because gasoline was $5.25 to $5.50 a gallon here in New Jersey, right? And that was just me, right? That was coming out of my own pocket. But these poor people that are on the ground, that are working every day, they're going to work, they're coming home, they're not getting paid the wages that they used to. And now everything costs more. Yeah, the people of New Jersey are hurting, and I don't see the economy getting any better. One of the reasons why I was fortunate enough to be able to retire from the FBI earlier than I wanted to, because I wanted to keep working. I really loved my job. It's just that the FBI left me. I didn't leave the FBI. And it was because of Donald Trump, right? When Donald Trump took office, we have what we call a thrift savings plan. So we have a retirement package from the US government, which is, it's not huge, right? It's smaller. And the bulk of our retirement comes from what they call the thrift savings plan. The thrift savings plan is a fund that we ourselves invest in. And, it's based on what the government, the IRS limit is. So you could invest up to 15,000, 16,000, 17,000, but you couldn't go over that mark. And every year it went up. So every year I tried to invest everything that I could into that fund, right? And it was like 5 different funds you can invest in. It was a small cap, a large cap, that sort of thing. And I was investing my money into that. That was my retirement money, right?
Right.
We were just kind of struggling along under Barack Obama. I was making 3, 4, 5% interest on that money. And then Donald Trump came along. And the next thing you know, I'm making 25%, 30%, 35%, right? And my stock portfolio went up. This is my retirement money. Donald Trump was one of the reasons why I was able to say, you know what? I can't work for the FBI anymore. I'm going to get out, and I still had money that I could live on. And basically that's what I'm doing now. So I'm advocating, basically against the FBI on my own savings that I used and that I earned through the FBI. And I couldn't have done it if Donald Trump hadn't taken office for 4 years. I wish he had taken another 4 years.
So let's examine that for a second. Going back to the Russophobia, did you find it ironic that one of the architects of this is now facing jail time for taking a bribe? And I forgot how much it was, like 50,000. It wasn't very much. Am I remembering that correctly?
$250,000. You mean Charlie McGonigal?
Okay. Yeah.
So
but still,
for folks that don't know it, Charlie McGonigal is the special agent in charge of the Counterintelligence Division of the New York office, one of the largest counterintelligence divisions within the FBI. He was in charge of everything, including all of the Russia, all of the information related to Russia. Now, it's my professional opinion. I have no proof of this, but I believe that Charlie McGonigal, for $250,000, we don't know what was going on with him. He was meeting with an Albanian intelligence officer. And remember what I said, an intelligence officer is a spy, right? Now, this spy was supposedly retired, right? But no spy ever retires, because if the Albanian president calls this guy up and answers the phone and says, hey, listen, can you make contact with Charlie McGonigal? We'll give you 50 grand. He's going to do it. So what was that relationship between Charlie McGonigal and this ex-counterintelligence spy, right, from Albania, number one? And number two, what was the exact purpose for him to meet with the Albanian president? Was the Albanian president trying to get information on Russia? I don't know. These are the things that need to be looked at further. I'm not buying this. It was a business transaction, because nobody gets paid. Again, and this goes back to the diamonds incident with Hunter Biden, right? Nobody gets paid in a business. No businessman gives an individual $250,000. And I know it was more. It was like, I think it was either 2 or 3 different transactions, but in a parking lot, cash in a paper bag, right? It doesn't happen. That's what happened, right? What's that?
Wow. So we're not talking about like a Zelle transaction.
No, that's right, exactly, right. So why did this happen? Well, listen, business. You
don't want to be caught. If you're getting a paper bag of cash in a parking lot, that's like a drug deal or something else. That's clandestine. That's criminal.
That's exactly right. And it was from supposedly a retired, intelligence agent. So, most people know that, and you probably have viewers out there that are listening that are businessmen. No businessman is going to give somebody cash blindly, right? They're going to write a check. And why do they write that check? So that they have proof, right, that they made a payment to somebody, so that they could turn around and take that check and write it off on their taxes, because everybody knows that you get 33 1/3 back from the U.S. government for business expenses, right? So nobody's gonna give them cash and just say, okay, see you later, have a nice day. No businessman's going to. So I don't believe it was a business transaction, and there was something more going on there that the United States government needs to investigate. But I do find it ironic that the same person that was targeting Donald Trump in Crossfire Hurricane with all of this Russiagate stuff was basically colluding with the Russians himself to try to enrich himself. It's disgusting.
So, I mean, working in that, now that you see us, we're all in a proxy war against Russia via Ukraine, right? That there's no question. And that there was a coup in 2014 that was Western backed. That was revealed by Julian Assange. And Victoria Nuland has basically admitted they don't even hide it anymore. Like, there was a coup. It's now Kiev as a regime, right? That as Western friendly. And NATO, meanwhile, over the decades, was doing what the exact opposite of what US diplomats were saying to Gorbachev when they said, we will not go one inch east. And then for a decade, they spent all that time going more and more east.
Yeah.
So what we know now, because Russia has said it openly, very openly, that they got intelligence that Ukraine was about to attack eastern Donbass, and there was already 15,000 Russian nationals that were killed. Now, I've talked to several people in the Donbass region who have witnessed Kiev shelling its own people. This is not like Russian propaganda. I've talked to a child who's on a Ukrainian kill list because she wanted peace, and did this videotape for the UN, and is a target. They're killing their own people. Yeah. So they went in finally after 8 years, and when they got that intelligence that the borders are going to be encroached. And I think what people don't understand geographically is where they're located, where that location is, and as NATO is moving and getting more aggressive, they're 45 minutes with a missile launch to city centers in Russia. So if we had the same thing happening in the United States, what would our reaction be? I mean, you're FBI. What do you think it would be?
I think it would be the same reaction. I mean, I think a lot of this could have been prevented. But again, war makes money, and that's what these politicians are looking at. They want to keep this going as long as they can because they lost the gravy train of the Afghanistan war. So what did they do?
They pivoted.
I'm sorry?
They pivoted to
exactly. I'm just going to turn my volume up here a little bit. They've lost that gravy train of all of the weapons going in. There's a reason why we left all those weapons in Afghanistan and didn't take them with us, because basically the politicians wanted the taxpayers to buy more from the companies that they're invested in. I don't think any of these politicians should be allowed to invest in any company that has any ties to the United States government, but yet they do. And they do a lot of this insider trading, and it's a crime, and it needs to stop. But this is all about money. And Zelensky's just as in blame for all of this, because that is a very corrupt regime, right? I mean, this is a regime that shut down Russian Orthodox churches, right? These are individuals that aren't for war, right? They're basically a threat to Zelensky because he wants to keep the war going, and he wants to get as much money as he can and pull that golden parachute at the last minute, and just like the Afghan president did, and fly out with as much cash as he can to whatever country will accept him, and he'll live comfortably for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, not Europe, but the United States will be responsible on U.S. tax dollars for rebuilding basically Ukraine, and that's going to happen, I bet you.
Interesting. That's really interesting. You know what? I want to use this moment to do two things. First, I want to ask Reade if we have any questions for you.
No, you covered most of it, honestly.
Oh, really? So we answered questions? Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is give a little plug. I mentioned to you off air, Steve, and to the audience, I'm going to be a speaker at the Rage Against the War Machine, and it looks like Ron Paul will be there, as well as Tulsi Gabbard and some others. We have people, and Jimmy Dore is one of the keynote speakers. Kim Iverson is speaking, Max Blumenthal, Scott Horton. I mean, there's just from all different political, it's the political range, actually. Libertarians, Republicans, lefties that got left behind by the Democrats because the Democrats become pro-war. So Rage Against the War Machine, and Reade just showed that we're going to be there February 19th in DC. So come and see all of us, and I hope that you can show up as well. Maybe you and Kyle can
we'll have to check the schedule and see what we're doing. I ever since I started speaking out, especially these last few weeks, I've done I've been doing news spots almost every day. If your viewers follow me, on Twitter at Steve Gray, Gray, NJ4. They'll be, you know, they'll learn a little more about me. They'll know exactly where I'll be popping up next. And, you know, every now and then I release a little more about the FBI and basically what's been going on inside the FBI. I do have some sources within the FBI that have been bringing me some information, and I'm still, you know, sorting that out, and you know, I'm going to release that a little more each time. I have to be careful. You know, I've been threatened several times by the FBI. If your viewers don't know, you know, I received a phone call from the FBI basically telling me to keep my mouth shut. And the reason why is because you don't go against the family. So I'm retired FBI agent. I'm supposed to leave, you know, with a smiling face and, you know, tell everybody what a great place it is to work for. I haven't done that, and I've gone against the family for that. So for that reason, I received in the mail a package of mourning bands. A mourning band is a black band that you slip over your police badge or your FBI badge when an FBI agent dies in the line of duty. Well, I received 100 of those from the New York office in the mail via FedEx. So that's a pretty strong case, you know, to telling me to keep my mouth shut. And then when I continue to speak out,
like that, isn't that? I mean, aren't they breaking their own law by making a threat like that so overtly using the mail?
They don't care because a lot of times they don't know who's doing it, right? We don't know who was directing anybody to do it. We have a huge mailroom within the New York office, and you only need to put on a sticky note, deliver it to this person, and throw it in the box. Nobody knows who it came from or where it originated from. So it could have been an SAC all the way down to a support employee at the FBI, and there's no way you could trace that back, and they know that. So yeah, those are the problems. And then later on down the road, I got a call from FBI headquarters saying that they lost my retirement package and I'd have to start over. So
they lost it.
That's what they claim. I believe they probably threw it in the shredder. That delayed my retirement for 9 months. So I didn't get a paycheck from the federal government for 9 months because of that delay. It's crazy. And then later on, through some of my sources within the FBI, they told me that the FBI had been basically poring over all of my old cases, looking for anything that they can hang me on. The only problem with it, I'm sorry?
Wow, that's disturbing.
Yeah, it is.
Looking for, you have 23 years of service, so that's a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for your viewers to know, I was an excellent FBI agent. I received 0 disciplinary actions against me while I was in the FBI. And I always received the highest rating on my performance appraisal because I took my job seriously and I came in every day and did it to the best of my ability. And then I went home safe every night. And, you know, that included basically working almost every major holiday, including Christmas and Easter, the 4th of July. I spent one Christmas and one New Year's in a parking lot watching a terrorism suspect in Florida when, you know, I should have been home with my family. But, you know, these are the things that are much more important at the time to make sure that this person didn't go out and hurt anybody. So these are the things, me, I'm doing my job, but yet now, because I've said some things that the FBI doesn't like, they're basically coming after me.
So do you want to tell our audience, since you release things a little bit at a time, anything new that you want to talk about this week, or are you
well, no, I don't want to specifically say anything right now because I always have to do my research and make sure that, number one, the information is right and correct. So I always try to corroborate it with 2 different sources so that I know that the information is correct, because that's the problem we have in the US government, isn't it? We get information from one source, we don't corroborate it with anything else, and then we just send it out to the media and you know, whether it's truthful or not. But that's not the way we're supposed to operate within the FBI. We're supposed to double and triple check that information to make sure that it's right before we use it in anything.
Well, because you could be being used also, right?
Absolutely.
They could be giving you information that's absolutely false, and then if you repeated it, you could get in trouble for propagating information that isn't true.
That's right, because you never know who you're dealing with within the FBI. You could have your best friend, but you know, you don't know what your best friend's, you know, problems are or how he got jammed up or something along those lines, and they could be using him to get to me. So you know, it's not conspiracy stuff. It's just stuff that you have to be careful of and make sure that, you know, you don't step on your own feet when you're doing stuff, you know, like this.
Is the information that you're mostly getting focused on surveillance of American citizens and kind of like what happened with Trump, or is it more international? I mean,
No, it's actually more within the organization itself, the internal politics of the office.
Do you feel like there's a movement away from Biden, that people within the FBI and other intelligence branches are now seeing, like, the corruption, maybe the ones that are not, in line with that way of thinking and don't want to be part of that? Is there a shift away, or is it still really just still a machine that's working for the Biden crime family?
No, it's actually getting worse. So when I say that, I mean they're losing individuals like myself, good conservative FBI agents, right? At a whopping pace. They're leaving the FBI just because it's getting that bad, and it's not really a friendly place for a conservative agent to work anymore. The other thing is that the FBI has been hiring at a rapid pace more leftist FBI agents. Let me give you an example. When I was the supervisor of Operations Command, we had a rotation of new agents to come through. And every time a rotation of new agents would come through, every 2 weeks, I'd sit down with them in my office and I'd ask them, why did you want to become an FBI agent? A lot of times you get the same answers, to fight crime, to help people, that sort of thing. But I started getting answers like this. A woman sat down one day and I said, well, how you doing? She was from San Francisco Bay Area. And I said, why did you want to become an FBI agent? And she said, well, based on what I've been seeing on TV and all of the things that have been happening, I became an FBI agent because I want to put cops in jail. So this is the mentality of the agents that we're getting now. And we're getting these kids that have been indoctrinated right throughout their entire education, from kindergarten all the way up through college. And now they're getting out of college with this new ideology that doesn't really fit law enforcement from within. So that's a problem. And, if they think all cops are bad, then that's a problem, because they're not all bad. It's like less than 0.5% that we have problems with out there with police officers. The FBI partners with police officers every day to get out and fight crime and fight counterterrorism. But we can't have agents saying that in the elevator banks, that she doesn't like cops and that she wants to put them in jail. That's a problem.
Interesting, turn of events with Trump. I remember Seb Gorka talked about how the seventh floor, he referred to it, wanted Trump impeached. Do you feel like the CIA and DOJ are colluding with the FBI to an extent? Because the conversation was generally around social media and around freedom of speech and around things that are happening right now. What is your opinion about the FBI? And then how many, I forget how many FBI agents were hired by Twitter, former FBI, or they retired there or whatever. Yeah. What is your opinion of that infiltration? Is it an infiltration, or is it just coincidence? What is your thought about all of that?
I don't believe that any of the intel services within the federal government can be trusted, number one. And that includes the FBI. I don't think that they can be trusted to do the right thing. I think that they're operating on their own, sort of like how, and at the direction, I think Barack Obama started a lot of this, right? So Barack Obama wanted to spy on Donald Trump. So what did he do? He had to go through somebody to get there. Now, that's my own personal opinion, my professional opinion, but there's no way in the world that the Obama administration didn't know that there was spying on the Trump campaign. There's absolutely no way. And I believe it was happening, and with the help of the intelligence services. And you see it with the help of the FISA, right? They lied on the FISA, they got the FISA, and that started the ball rolling. It didn't stop there, though. They spied on Donald Trump's White House, right? It didn't stop there. They continued this spying. Now, is this at the direction of the ex-president Barack Obama or somebody else, or are they doing this on their own? That's something that needs to be investigated. I believe it's a little bit of both. I believe that and we saw this like with the Secret Service, right? When Donald Trump got hired, We saw leftist Secret Service agents flipping out, saying they're not going to protect them, and they'd quit before they had to send any of their agents down to protect Donald Trump, right? Well, where's this coming from? That's not for you to say. You have a job. Your job is to protect the president of the United States, no matter who it is. You keep your mouth shut and you go and do your job. But that wasn't what's happening. So I believe it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you.
Okay. I have a question for you. Quick
Sure.
take. Edward Snowden, hero or traitor?
That's a great question. A little bit of both. And I say that because a lot of the information that he brought forward is important to know, that what was going on with the Patriot Act, and the fact that the United States government is using the Patriot Act against citizens of the United States. And this all ties into the spying against the United States and how it's getting perpetually worse, right?
But so that was his whole gig. He basically was talking about years before we knew it about mass surveillance. So, well, as a U.S. citizen who has never intelligence services, never worked for that branch of the government, I can see in my eyes, he's a hero because he gave up his ability to live here and have a family here. He gave up his freedom essentially to give us that information that nobody had at the time.
My point of that is that he went about it the wrong way, which is the reason why I believe that he's a hero for bringing it forward. But there's a right way and a wrong way to bring that information forward, and he didn't choose the right path to do that. And you never want to lean against a foreign government, right, against your own government. And that's where I have the problem. You're always an American first, even though your country is doing something wrong. You're always an American first, right? It'd be like, it would be like one of the, like a Philadelphia Phillies player, in the middle of the game, heading over to the other dugout to play shortstop because they lost their shortstop. It's not supposed to happen that way. And it shouldn't have happened with him. He should have chose another way to get that information out.
Here's an Australian citizen, Julian Assange.
Yeah.
Who is actually a right. And he exposed the coup in 2014, many things that were corrupt, that were being hidden, and that, like the droning that caused death of civilians, things like that. Like the WikiLeaks was a journalistic thing, and New York Times, other legacy media won Pulitzers and won their awards off of his work. And then he's imprisoned. Now he's going to be supposedly brought here under espionage charges, even though he's an Australian citizen, and he's a journalist and a publisher. Yeah. What is your opinion about Julian Assange?
Again, I believe he's a hero for bringing all of this forward, right? But the way the United States government is treating him is just how they treat everybody, right? If the United States government doesn't like you or like something that you've done, they're going to target you. Look at Project Veritas as an example, right? They raided Project Veritas, right? Based on a diary that they received, right, through a third party that happened to belong to Joe Biden's daughter. And this diary apparently had some pretty bad stuff in it.
Yeah.
Project Veritas, like they normally do, wasn't able to verify the information within the diary. They couldn't verify it or corroborate it with another source. So they got rid of it and gave it to a police department and said, hey, listen, we got this from a third party who gave it to us. It's just not, it's not ours. Here, take it. That police department in turn gave it to the FBI. The FBI used that on some really bullcrap warrant to go and raid Project Veritas. And officers of Project Veritas, again, for viewers that don't understand this, the FBI goes at 6 a.m, banging on their door, waking them up out of a sound sleep, enters their home, immediately grabs hold of everybody, right? They don't necessarily handcuff them, but they take everybody into one room and they sit them down on a couch, and they make sure they search the entire area to make sure that there's no weapons or anything, and they hold them there, and they can't leave until the FBI is done searching that house. Wow. The FBI searched that house for 2 reasons. They searched Project Veritas. Number one, to send a message. Hey, if you go to Project Veritas, we're going to find out who you are, and we're going to do this to you. And number 2, to get all of their electronic devices and to search those electronic devices to go after the individuals that were on those electronic devices to say, hey, we know who you are now. We know you gave information to Project Veritas. If you continue to do this, we're going to do the same thing to you, right? That's the reason why. Project Veritas was never charged. And I've been an FBI agent for 23 years. Normally when we search a house on a probable cause warrant, search warrant, right? We always find the evidence there, right? And then there's always a charge that comes or 3 or 4 months later down the road where the individual is then arrested based on the information that was found at the home of the person that we searched. That didn't happen in Project Veritas, right? It didn't happen with Rudy Giuliani, right? These cases are all bull. They're political hit jobs. And that's what we're seeing with Julian Assange. They go after these people, right, on basically bullshit charges. General Flynn, right, is another one, right? And they just bog them down. The government has deep pockets, and they just try to financially ruin these people, and they try to take their dignity away, and they try to take basically their entire life away until they're beat down where they just say, yeah, I give up. Whatever you say I did, and let's just call it a day so I can get on with my life. And I believe that's what they're going to do with Julian Assange too. They're going to try to make an example out of him. Now, did they make an example out of the person that stole the information? No, they didn't, right? That individual, what's his name? I'm trying to think because he's transgendered, so he goes by. What was the name? Chelsea Manning. Thank you very much. He served a little bit of jail time, and Obama pardoned him. So hey, thanks a lot. See you later.
She did serve, I think, 8 years, but let's go back to this. I want to go back to this. This is a really burning question from the audience. What is the solution with the FBI, CIA, DOJ? Do we shut it down? Like there's been, like, even Eisenhower said that we might come to this place in history where the military industrial complex takes over, where the intelligence agencies have all the power. Other presidents, like President Kennedy, others, spoke out against the intelligence services. So do you think the solution is to defund, as far as like those activities that they're doing that are harming and surveillance of US citizens, and start from the ground up?
What I've advocated for the FBI is that the FBI needs to get torn down from the top down. Okay. As soon as I left the FBI, one of the first TV shows I went on was the Grant Stinchfield show on Newsmax. And I told Grant Stinchfield back in February of 2022 that we've got a problem in the FBI. We have too many executive management agents who are sitting on their hands doing absolutely nothing because they don't want to rock the boat and get in trouble or do anything that's going to jeopardize their position when they retire in getting a huge job with a big company. And I told them at the time, those agents were going to the big tech companies, Twitter, Facebook, right? Google, Microsoft. All of these agents were getting jobs within these companies. I was explaining that, and nobody was listening. And now that it's a big deal because it's out there, and it's basically what I had been saying on the campaign trail for months, that FBI agents are abusing the system. We need to put a stop to that. The only way we're going to stop that, and I've advocated this, is number one, we need to split up the divisions of the FBI. The FBI has a $10.5 billion budget. That's huge money, right? Money is power. And as long as you have the counterterrorism, the criminal, and the counterintelligence division working together as one, you're never going to pull that power away from the FBI. But if you separate those divisions and pull them out of Washington, D.C., and send them elsewhere and make them their own entity, and then instead of the president, right, nominating somebody to be the head of those divisions, right, like James Comey or Christopher Wray, who's practically useless. The only reason Christopher Wray is there is to collect money as basically as a puppet of the Biden administration. He's not rocking the boat at all. He wants to stay the full 10 years and in the FBI and try to stretch it out as long as he can. He should have been fired. He should have been fired years ago. It's a shame. But yeah, so that's the only thing we can do.
Top down.
Yeah, because we have we don't have enough checks or balances. We have the FBI and Department of Justice basically, they're not reporting to anybody anymore. They're just doing their own thing. And you see that with the CIA as well, right? The CIA has an unknown budget. We don't know where all of that money's going to. We don't know what they're using that money for, right?
Right.
That's not the way it's supposed to be in America. There's no unknown budgets. Americans need to know what that budget is and where that money's going. And we're not getting that. And the same with the CIA. The CIA needs to be broken up into their separate divisions and then moved out of Washington, D.C., as far away from politicians as they can get.
Well, you know, I asked you a lot of tough questions in this interview, and I feel like you gave a lot of really interesting and insightful answers. And I know that, you know, I know the audience learned a lot, and I appreciate, you know, you bringing your knowledge to the show. So thank you so much, Steve Gray. And again, could you tell people how they can follow you and where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Twitter at Steve Gray NJ4. I'm also on Truth Social at Steve Gray, and I'm also on GETTR at Steve Gray NJ, and it's spelled STEVEGRAY. And as I said before, as your viewers don't know, the first time I spoke to Tara, it was an absolute pleasure. And I called her an American hero. I still believe she's an American hero for speaking out and doing the right thing. And I think it's atrocious what's been happening within the media. And you're always going to have my support. So I thank you so much. Absolutely.
Well, please put in a good word for me with your FBI friends, so I don't get the 6 a.m. knock.
I wouldn't worry about the FBI.
I'm joking. But I appreciate you being on the show, and I really appreciate your candor. And you know, I really enjoyed you. You can also, my audience can catch you also on the Kim Iverson show. They can look at it on Rumble and see you. And I'd like to have you on again sometime to ask you about geopolitical issues, because I'm sure this China issue is going to come up again, especially with the amount of attention that was given to the balloon. Yeah. So Reade, what I wanted to do is I wanted to end the show here. And then if you could play for the audience, the Jimmy Dore clip, we'll leave on that with the link to Rage Against the War Machine. Would that be cool? Reade?
Yeah, I'm down for that. I'm good.
Okay, let's do it. All right. So play that clip. And audience that has been watching, all the people that out there that follow me, I really appreciate it. Please follow me at Reade Alexandra. Follow me on YouTube or Rumble. Rumble doesn't censor. That's why I really love them. And, you know, we'll be back a week from Friday. We'll be doing Fridays from now on at 7 p.m. And Reade was kind enough to give up his Friday night to hang out with me for an hour to talk about geopolitical stuff. So thanks, Reade. And thank you, Ian. All right. So on that note, Steve Gray, thank you. You are amazing. It was wonderful to have you.
Thanks, Tara. You have a good night.
You too. Good night, everyone.
What do you think it means?
What I think it means is that the United States is trying to provoke and saber rattle with another nuclear power, right? This is what we were supposed to be afraid of was going to happen with Donald Trump, right? We couldn't have, he's a crazy man who's going to have his finger on the nuclear button. And now we have Demented Joe, who is saber rattling with 2 nuclear powers, and they get the corporate media sponsored by the military industrial complex to get Americans to cheer it on. And why do Americans cheer it on? Because they have no idea what's actually happening with their foreign policy. And what's worse is they have no idea that they have no idea that they don't have any idea what's happening with their foreign policy. We have 400 military bases surrounding China since the Korean War. Do we really think that China is getting ready to invade the United States? Because I tell you, they're not. They make everything we use in the United States. Why? Because the same people who want this war are the same people who took the good jobs that are manufacturing jobs in America, turned them into low-paying, crappy jobs, and then shipped them to China, and then we get angry at them for the system that we set up. If they're so corrupt, because that's the thing, Americans have no idea how corrupt their government is. They think our government's just regular corrupt, like, oh, Trump gave his son a job, or Biden gave his kid a no-show job in the Ukraine war. That's not, the whole thing is corrupt. The $800 billion military budget is $800 billion of corruption. Why do we have to have 800-900 military bases around? We're the ones provoking this war, just like we provoked the war in Ukraine. We are now now provoking a war with China. And who benefits? I'll tell you right now, your enemy is not China. Your enemy is not Russia. Your enemy is the military-industrial complex, which has been fleecing this country to the tunes of hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars. How many times are we going to have a defense secretary say, hey, we can't account for $2 trillion in the Pentagon again? Which has happened twice now in my lifetime. So again, people are being, the war machine cannot be stopped. Who's running this country? The war machine. It certainly isn't Joe Biden making these decisions. I would like to know who is making the decisions. And I just want to remind everybody, the United States is the world's terrorist. We just set the Middle East on fire in the last 20 years, and now we're doing a proxy war in Ukraine, which we provoked, NATO provoked, and it was just admitted that we provoked it by the former Prime Minister of Germany. And now we're trying to saber rattle with China, and they're predicting a war. Again, China's not going to invade us. China's not our enemy. We might have an economic war. That's what these are. These are economic wars. These are wars in Ukraine. It's about liquefied natural gas and making sure Germany and Russia never come together, because we fear Russia's natural resources and manpower, and we fear them getting together with Germany with their technology and their capital. And so that's why we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. That's why we're doing the Ukraine war. This is all about hegemony, imperialism, and economics. And if there's a Marine somewhere, it's there because they're about to steal some natural resources from another country. As everybody's screaming about what a bad guy Putin is for invading Ukraine, the United States is currently occupying a third of Syria. And which third is that? It's the third that has the oil. And how do I know we're there to steal their oil? Because the President of the United States said so.
And we're not even benefiting economically. Of course, that's the rub. Jimmy Dore, appreciate it. Thank you.